because he was asked in a press conference about the attacks on Harris, her lack of blackness. Meanwhile, this is a guy that's changed his name like 40 times. Have a listen to this.
Donald Trump said something very simple, totally inoffensive, but frankly, obviously true to me, which is that Kamala Harris is a chameleon. She's a fake, and the American people have to look at her record if we actually want to know how she stands on the issues, because her words simply can't be trusted. Sir.
How can you fake your race? If
I'm sorry?
both Indian and black, how can she fake her race?
She fakes who she is depending on the audience that she's in front of, and that's who she is, and that's who she's always been.
Complete and total lie. That's not true. She's proud of who she is. And if there's anybody that's fake, it's the guy that you work for and yourself. You mentioned that your boss is the next American Adolf Hitler. Oh, I had an epiphany. He was a great president. Give me a frickin' break, you stupid liar. Give me a break. And then the attacks on, well, Harris didn't pick Shapiro because he's Jewish and she must be anti-Semitic. Have a listen to this.
You have repeatedly suggested that the only reason Kamala Harris didn't pick Josh Shapiro to be her running mate is because of his Jewish faith. Do you have any evidence to support that assertion that a person who's married to a Jewish man is somehow anti-Semitic or bowing to anti-Semites?
Well, I reject the premise of the question. I did not say that that was the only reason that Kamala Harris didn't choose Josh Shapiro. So you should, take a little less DNC talking points when you ask your questions and ask a real question.
No, that is a real question. Even if that was true, and you had plenty of other reasons, you're still claiming that Harris didn't pick Shapiro because he's Jewish. The question still stands, and JD Vance is incapable of answering it, because the answer would be no, I don't have any direct evidence that Harris didn't pick Shapiro because he was Jewish. The answer is no. But notice how he doesn't answer the question, which is a very fair one, by the way. And Vance and Trump have said it over and over again, that the reason why Harris didn't pick Shapiro is because he's Jewish, somehow anti-Semitism. And how does JD Vance answer that question? I reject the premise of the question. That's a DNC question because I didn't say it was the only reason. Okay, so what? Let's phrase the question like this. I know you've given a lot of reasons, Mr. Vance, on why you believe Harris didn't pick Shapiro, but one of those reasons that you suggested was that Harris didn't pick Shapiro because he's Jewish. Do you have any direct evidence when you put forth that claim? It's the same question. The question wasn't, do you have other reasons or is this the only reason? That wasn't the question. The question was, do you have any direct evidence? Of course he doesn't. That's how these Republicans fail to answer these questions. They spin. JD Vance is spinning. By the way, that's not a DNC question. It's a logical question because you guys are morons. And I got to tell you something. This guy Waltz, even though I would have preferred Shapiro, this guy Waltz seems like a pretty darn good guy and a great candidate. His sense of humor, he's off the cuff. He resonates with people. He's just a good dude and a good governor. Guy that you want to sit down and have a beer with. Former football coach, former teacher. Yes, served 24 years. It's about 20 years more than JD Vance served. And this is the part of the press conference that is so humiliating to JD Vance, if he hasn't already been humiliated time and time again, rightfully so. So this is the part of the press conference. And if you remember Donald Trump in Chicago last week, he was asked about the vice presidential pick in JD Vance. Do you think JD Vance will be ready on day one? And Donald Trump's response was basically, well, the vice presidency really doesn't have any bearing on who wins the president of the United States. And JD Vance is asked about that, and listen to his pathetic dweeb of an answer.
When Trump was at the NABJ conference, he was asked whether you'd be ready to assume the presidency on day one. And he responded by talking about how the vice president pick doesn't really impact the election outcome.
Sure.
Was that the response that you were hoping for from the former president?
Well, what the president has said, and I agree with him, is that most people are voting at the top of the ticket.
So basically what I'm saying is that I really don't matter. This guy has no dignity, no self-worth. You have your boss who's basically saying you don't matter. And by the way, I would disagree with the president, former president, excuse me. JD Vance does matter because he's hurting the Trump campaign. If anything, he's hurting Donald Trump.